42.
And we're live.
42.
Doc, I can't count that high.
42 is the answer.
So it's the answer to the universe, question? But I mean, don't ask me what comes before or after it. But anyway, let's pretend we know what we're doing. Let's pretend we know what we're doing, Doc. We're professionals. We've done this before. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. A place where pineapple on pizza is heresy and Doc is wrong. So without further ado... Ouch, you had to go there? Really?
You went after my pineapple.
Well, we could talk about what a certain news article said pineapples meant, but that's not a family-friendly topic, so we will move on. Instead, we will talk to Mr. Blaze Ward. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers, please?
Good evening, afternoon, day, whatever it is. I'm Blaze Ward, full-time sci-fi writer out of Seattle. Retired, crazy, feral, hiding out in the trees. Don't
they have like the Space Needle or something out there?
We do.
See?
If you stand at the top of the Space Needle, I'm about 35 miles southeast of you out in the mountains.
Cool.
Yeah. I moved out here
does it have snow?
Never going back.
Do you have snow? Because that's a hard one for me. I don't like the White Death.
Not presently. About 3 weeks ago, we got 22 inches of snow over a 2-day period, and it lasted for about 2 weeks before it melted. But it's nice today.
Okay, I can maybe live with that if it's like a blue moon kind of situation.
No, it's an annual, but it's a here and gone. Okay. Be prepared to be.
That's like a blue moon situation because JR's brain doesn't work long enough for him to remember the previous.
Have you seen that movie 50 First Dates? That's like me. I just forget everything.
Except you don't get 50 dates.
Doc, why do you kind of keep picking on me like this? Damn. All right. So any relation to James Ward?
Not that I'm aware of, but he's a really cool guy, and I got him to sign my copy of Deities and Demigods last year.
Nice.
I have an original first edition, and he said, anybody wants it signed, mail it. So I did, which was just all sorts of awesome.
Yeah.
Did you
we probably are because all the wards are related.
I'd almost be afraid of the post office losing it, and I would have had to like insure it doubly in case they did.
That's... I don't know what I'll do with it, but it's worth a lot more because it's signed.
Yeah. All right. So the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we first found them. And this will be another podcast since Doc has taken over scheduling, where she said, be here or be square. And here I be.
It is not. It is not. This is when Mel said, hey, guys, you need to talk to this person because he's amazing.
And I can fool.
But let's be fair. The chain of custody was Mel told you and you told me. So my statement still is true.
I was told there was some blackmail involved, though, so I'm not sure who was doing who.
Oh, Mel was doing my feet.
All right, so there went that family-friendly rating, and let's just dive off the deep end.
Massaging feet is not unfamily-friendly.
Mm-hmm. All right, Doc, move on and ask your favorite question.
Pineapple belongs on pizza, right?
Yeah, actually.
I will concede that if you concede that Pern is fantasy.
JR, genetic engineering. Now shut up and you don't know anything. So, religion, Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
So, when I was a kid, I lived in Salina, Kansas, and this was before cable. So, we had Star Trek and the reruns in the mid-'70s. And so I actually got to watch it in those days. But Star Wars was life-changing because we did that for my 8th birthday party.
Ooh.
And it was just that. So I'm kind of even odd with those because they're so different.
I can get that. So fantasy-wise, maybe that might be a little bit more clear-cut for you. Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, or The Wheel of Time?
So the first one and the third one bored me to tears. Lord of the Rings I've watched, but I can't read. I grew up reading Howard and a bunch of those fantasy weirdos from the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Okay.
So the Conan books were actually what my fantasy introduction was. But the ones that were edited by Sprague de Camp and all of those, that edition in the 70s.
Yeah, they're working on bringing up some expanded universe of Conan.
Cool. You mean besides the stuff Robert Jordan did in the 80s?
Yes. No, like some new stuff.
Cool.
I know the editor who's trying to build that out.
Awesome.
Really nice guy.
Is it all public domain now?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea. Sorry.
I thought it went public domain, but then it sounded like when he was talking about it, because I've read some of his posts when Doc shared it, it sounded like maybe he bought the rights right before to the franchise to do more.
Well,
it's unclear.
If it's private domain, it'll stay private domain probably for another 10 or 15 years. Public domain is anything published before 1924, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounded like he had exclusive rights. So
cool.
If you're listening, dear listener, and you know the details, post it in the comments, and we'll happily read them.
Yeah, I'd like to know that one myself.
So
all right, Doc. Next question is mine. Stop stealing.
It's green.
So what was your first? Number 7 is not green. You don't have an updated document. Jeez.
I don't have an updated document. So my number 6 is next.
Oh, you didn't ask 6. That's why I don't count. Oops.
You're so brain damaged.
Have gun will travel. Pew pew.
So, which one was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
Fantasy was my first love, but I really shifted over to sci-fi in my mid-teens and ran with it from there. So, like I said, Conan, but after that, in the 80s, I got into some really old stuff. Doc Smith,
did you,
those of you new Lensman.
Ooh, yeah. Did you ever read any of the Choose Your Own Adventure sci-fi books and fantasy books that were out there back in the 80s?
Lived on them. I'm a kid of the early 80s.
Did you cheat and look ahead? Did you
cheat
and look ahead like I did? Or Doc, when you read them, did you cheat?
I did not cheat. I did, however, take a pad of paper and do every single permutation.
Okay, that's way more nerdy than I ever got.
Yeah.
This is why everybody loves Doc. She's super nerd. All right.
I thought it was my stellar personality and my good taste in booze.
That too. Those are also nerdy qualities that we enjoy. One of these days, you're going to have to make a recommendation of a good mead for me, because I'm going to try it one of these days.
Viking Alchemist Meadery. Bliss is my favorite.
We mention them often enough. If you listen, dear PR representative for Alchemy Meadery, you really should consider sponsoring us and just give us the.
Where are they at? We have a whole bunch of meaderies in Seattle. But
they're here in Atlanta. They're all veteran owned.
Cool.
And it's really awesome and amazing. So, basically all veteran owned. What?
I'm just saying, if we're going to shill for them so much, we should at least get free booze out of it. I'd be happy to get paid in booze.
I get a 15% discount when I go.
Sweet.
Because I'm a vet.
That's something.
Awesome.
I'll take that. So what's your first memory of engaging in... Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I make meat occasionally, but there's so much good stuff around here that I haven't gotten them to all of them in Seattle.
I tried one, and it tasted like a really dry wine, and I'm not a huge wine fan, so
it just wasn't for me. But I'm told they're as well.
That's what Doc said, that I should try around. Much like finding the right beer, you got to find the right mead. So, but that is maybe we should almost start the booze podcast to go with the Blasters and Blades. We could call it Blasters and Blades and Booze, the After Dark edition. And that's just an excuse to write off our booze consumption as a tax deduction.
Bring me back for that. I
just thinking out loud
still.
I really want to still, and I keep getting told no.
Yeah.
No, I want to still. I wonder how much room.
You don't know how to use a still, Jared.
Look, I barely made it through chemistry, but I think that qualifies me as an expert. So, I watched a season of Breaking Bad. That's another one in my favor. So, what was your first memory of engaging in speculative fiction? Was it watching Star Trek? Was it reading Conan, or was there some other venue of which led you to?
It was watching Star Trek, And then Star Wars came out, and there was a whole bunch of sci-fi in the late 70s. Plus, I had an uncle who loved me and got me subscriptions to a whole bunch of comic books. So every month, I would have something come in a little plain brown wrapper. And I still have a bunch of those. You guys are silly.
We actually it had been suggested to us when we were still the Sci-Fi Shenanigans that we could do episodes going over some of those old magazines, because some other of our guests have their collection as well. But that didn't really lend itself to audio-only platform, unfortunately. So maybe that's something to reconsider now that we've got the video. So, all right. So what is it about speculative fiction as a genre that you love?
I tell people this when I'm writing science fiction because I like writing space opera, big stuff. I can't be wrong. I can be inconsistent with my details, but I cannot be wrong when I'm making stuff up. Write it all down and make sure you don't say it wrong the second time. All the details are right, but I can't be wrong. So I can.
Doc tells me I'm wrong all the time.
Well, I can't help you with those two.
Maybe you need to write more, JR.
You wound me. So how did your love... I'm trying not to die laughing. Often on mute. How did your love of speculative fiction as a genre transition into you writing stories in this space?
When I married my second wife, she was already a writer, Leah Cutter. She had done Paper Mage and several other books out of New York 20 odd years ago. And she said, you could make money writing this stuff. So I started with a bunch of kind of sword and sorcery fantasy stuff because I took old D&D campaigns, because I've been playing D&D for 40 years now, and did those. And then one day I said, fantasy's fun, but I want spaceships. And then something accidentally weird happened, and the Amazon machine looked at me and said, I'm going to make you famous for 90 days.
Nice.
And put me in the top 10 of the space opera category for about a week.
Nice.
Mind-boggling for a young writer.
I mean, I don't have any of that, but I was big in Australia for a month.
Cool.
So I got that going for me.
They love you in penal colonies.
Right.
You kind of walked into that.
All right,
JR.
Hey, you should come down to the South. Georgia used to be a penal colony. You'd be popular.
All right. So many authors let their own real-life experiences influence the stories they tell. So were there any specific formidable moments that shaped you as a storyteller?
Lots, but I've had to leave out a lot of the interesting details because some of the crazy stuff that I did in the 80s and 90s, the statute of limitations hasn't worn out yet.
Oh my.
But the best one, when I was in grad school for political science, I worked nights and weekends as a bouncer at a cowboy bar outside of a Marine base in Riverside, California for several years.
Nice.
Oh my goodness.
Always fun.
It was an interesting experience because I'm not a big guy. I'm only 5'10".
Well, you do have the leg up on them when they're drunk, but it also means they don't feel any pain.
Well, worse, they're used to being drunk and they're used to fighting when they're drunk, and I have to calm them down and get them out the door before they hurt anybody, like me.
Yeah, I don't know.
You get to ask your favoriteest questions, the nerdy fandom questions. So are you ready to dive in? Are you sure?
Yes. I'm positive.
You're something.
Yeah. So have you had anybody do any cool fan art or cosplay of one of your characters yet?
I have not, because I've not been lucky enough. But what I did do was, back when the Science Officer hit and the Jessica Keller Chronicles hit, I actually commissioned an artist to do a whole set of color plates. And I published them as a book called Uniforms of the Fleet Volume 1. Because I wanted somebody to do it. And there is a guy out there who has threatened to do action figures for me based on these uniforms.
Nice.
The problem is they cost about $100 a piece unless you're doing them in scales of 10 and 100,000 units.
Yeah.
And I just haven't worked up the gumption yet.
So,
but the running joke is he would do an action figure of himself.
Hey,
how big is your garage? I'm just, you gotta give it a few years. You'll get the con circuit.
See,
that might be big enough. Just as long as you don't need it to do barn things, you can store the action figures.
Claire, do you even know what barn things are?
Yeah, like moo cows and stuff.
Them stable things, and I am never mucking out stables again. Thank you very much.
I've ridden a camel once. That qualifies me as a cowboy, right?
No.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Have you? So, has anybody ever asked for your autograph? Not yours, JR. That was for your commitment papers.
Actually, yeah. At the time, I didn't appreciate who he was until later, but I was at Worldcon in Kansas City, and this would have been 2015, I think. I'm not sure, 15 or 16. And a guy walked up and knew my wife and asked for one of my books because she told him I was a writer, and he bought it right there and asked me to sign it, and later turned out to be Tom Whitmore, who is, kind of one of the Smoffs of science fiction on the West Coast. And she's like, "Do you know who that is?" I'm like, "No." And she explained. I'm like, "Oh, shit." And he and his wife have actually gotten to be pretty good friends. I see him occasionally.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When you're not chasing off elk.
I go into Seattle every 6 months or so.
See?
For provisions and victuals and such.
Yeah.
See, Doc, I could totally be a cowboy.
No, you can't.
I'm just waiting for a horse to bite him.
That's why he has doesn't have a
Ed?
picture, because his horse already did.
Look, Mr. Ed and I just had a little bit of a misunderstanding. All right?
Yes, you talked.
Horse.
He wanted you to shut up.
All right, Doc, bring the next question.
Okay. So was that the first time somebody asked you to sign a book?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What is the weirdest or funniest interaction you've had with a fan since you started writing?
So when I write space opera, I write military, and there tend to be these huge cast lists. And I mean huge, because like dozens and maybe 100 names. And I used to play a board game called Starfleet Battles in the early 80s. And one day I picked out a name from this old game that was their Jim Kirk analog named Phil Cosnett. And it was just a great name. And I plugged him in and I made him a captain of one of my ships. Later, I come to find out that the guys who created the game used the name of a buddy of theirs who reached out to me. And in November, he retired from a career in the Foreign Service Office where he was the ambassador to Kosovo. So I was writing fan fiction about the U.S. ambassador to Kosovo. And he's the one that wants to get action figures of himself made.
Well, I kind of get that.
Yeah. It's just one of those, I'm like, wait, I did what? Okay, sure. And he's a really fantastically nice guy. His wife, however, is jealous, and she demanded that I write a series about her next. So there will be an Allison series in a couple of years.
Hey, you do what you got to do, man. Keep the wives happy. Otherwise, they might give you food poisoning, which is why JR is not allowed to cook.
Oops.
Look, it only happened one time, and only 6 people went to the hospital. I called that a win in the law.
JR, one day you can graduate into wife status, but right now you suck at it.
Look, I got to get my apron and pearls eventually. All right, so this is where we change the subject with my blunt force segue, and we talk about everything Blaze Ward has written. So can you give us the Reader's Digest of your body of work?
Sometime in the first week in February, I will finish novel number 77. And
nice.
I have about 200 total titles if I were to publish all of them. Science Officer is the entry point to Alexandria Station, which is about 40 titles, most of them novels or novellas. But I'm a full-time professional and I write 4,000 words a day, every day.
So are you traditionally publishing these, or are you publishing them yourself?
Nope. Full indie. The running joke is I have never had a professional sale. Because if I write a 6-book series and I've only got 3 of them done, I want to get the rest of them done before I start putting them out.
Okay.
A novel is defined by the Hugos as anything longer than 40,000 words. And I usually write about 120,000 words a month. So
a novel a month would be by modern standards. Okay. That's
kind of slacking.
I'll get there.
I've been doing about 15 or so a year.
That sounds exhausting.
Okay, I'm not jealous at all. So do you
I'm a professional. That's what I do.
Do you write it the old-fashioned way, like Marco Clusis said he does, by pen in a notebook? Do you write it with a stylus on a special pad, type it, audio? How do you get it down?
Type. Get up in the morning, fix myself breakfast, surf the news, and then from 8 till about 11, I write 4,000 words.
Okay.
You get up early.
When I grow up, Doc, I'll get there.
You're never growing up.
So
I used to be a data architect in Seattle, so I'd get up at 4 in the morning. So sleep until 6:30 feels decadent.
Fair.
I used to wake up before the sun when I was in the Army, and then I said, I'm a civilian now. Fort Couch doesn't require that, and I'm done. So all of that sounds fascinating, but today we're here to talk about Science Officer. So where did you get the premise for this universe? Was it psychedelics, Ouija board, overindulging in mead from the West Coast meaderies?
Actually, I'm a redneck, and when I was first working, I was trying to figure out hydroponics on a spaceship. And that took me to a character who was growing fruits and vegetables on a ship in space just because he could. And then from there, it kind of spawned outwards because the main character, the science officer, Javier, was alone on his little scout and he got captured by pirates and then fast talked his way onto the crew. And from there, the shenanigans ensued, and we're on book 11 now.
I know someone else who wrote a similar book 1, but then the Army required him to go do things and he hasn't finished.
Sorry.
So that is it's a fun premise.
It is.
The captured by pirates and forced to become a pirate or not, and sabotage from within.
So, no, he actually sweet talked his way aboard.
So did you go with, and obviously no spoilers, did you go with the Disney version of pirates are really just misunderstood good guys, looking at you, Nickelodeon and Disney, or did you take the true piracy where they were scallywags and ne'er-do-wells?
The reason he talked himself onto the crew is because they were going to sell him to an agricultural colony somewhere as a mining slave.
Yeah, that might suck.
And it goes in some dark places in the first 4 or 5 books.
So in other words, this is not fluffy Disney style pirates.
No, but
all right. So
evil characters are not really crew members. They're all outsiders, and they get theirs in the end.
So he's got the unofficial model of nobody promised you a happy ending.
The actual tagline for the series is Javier will survive the pirates. Will they survive him?
Ooh, I like that. We say that about Doc when she cooks in the kitchen. But before we dig in, yes?
We always survive my cooking. It's your cooking that's dangerous.
We'll see. So before we dig in, can we take a moment? I'm going to share this glorious cover. And can you tell us how you came up with this color scheme that you used? And because most of the time you go with darker colors and you went with sort of a tan, I think. I'm colorblind, but it looks tan to me.
So one of the interesting things about science fiction and especially space opera is that most people have been doing covers that are sepia or grimdark in their color schemes. Grays down to blacks or tans down to blacks. If you look at my covers, they are extremely colorful, and that's on purpose because they stand out. That science officer cover, when you bring it down to thumbnail, is like, ooh, what's that? What's that? And so that's really, it's marketing and branding. I loved that picture, but the old running joke is slap a spaceship on the cover and people will buy it because they know what it is.
Well, the running joke in indie circles was that everybody likes the sexy spaceship ass, and I noticed you went for the front of the spaceship and the back. So you got a little bit of both.
Actually, that's the front of both ships, I think.
I think that's the front of both ships, but it's like you got the underbelly shot too.
Yeah, there's some underboob going.
Oh, you're right. That is the front. Okay, some underboob. All right. So I do like that you have a lot of layers. You got at the top, you've got the sort of the planet behind or above them, and then you got the sunset. And I'm guessing that's water that the other one's going. And I like the look of the battered like Space Hulk. Every time I see this brand new shiny spaceship, I just keep thinking, when you've got micrometeorites and such, it's not going to stay pretty looking for long. No, so if you want me to believe this is a seasoned ship, you want. Aw, she does love me. If you want me to believe that it's a seasoned ship with a seasoned crew, you can't make it look like it just came off the production line.
No.
So I do like the cover. So did you do it yourself since you were
No.
So amazingly artistically inclined?
My wife is a fantastic graphic artist. I work for her. She's actually the boss around here. I refer to her as Fabulous Publisher Babe.
That works.
One way not to sleep on a couch. All right.
Definitely when his books
I do enjoy. Well, I mean, if he's writing that much a day, I'd imagine they're not past due very often.
I missed
that. Doc.
What?
She said you call her that. She said you call her the Fabulous Publisher Babe when your books are late. And I said at 4,000 words a day, I don't imagine he's late very often.
Yeah, that's what I call her all the time. So she's kind of awesome.
There you go, Doc.
No, I was more saying he always gets his books on time, so he doesn't have to sleep on the couch. See?
I understood. That's one way to backpedal, Doc, but we know what you really meant. So instead, let's ask him the next question, will you? Jeez, back on task, woman.
What is your 30-second elevator pitch for this novel?
They captured his ship, cut it up, and he had to hide the AI who lives aboard until he could find a new place for her to go live. Until then, he has to live with the pirates until he can escape them.
So what is it that really makes your series special in the way of science fiction?
He's all about the science. Javier is a botanist, and he raises chickens, or did when he had his ship. They cut out the botany bay and put it on the big ship, and he still raises chickens and fruits and vegetables and things like that. And so there's a very scientific approach to it. The pirates are bad, but they're poor. They're not evil people. They're just trying to make ends meet. And so it's really rich in personalities because I've got a dozen strong characters floating around, all being heroes in their own story. Even the 2.1 meter tall Amazon security chief who likes to bounce Javier off of bulkheads when he gets mouthy.
There's no for me to do that to him.
She knits in her spare
time. So that
time.
is 6. So 6 foot 8 inches. Like,
yeah. At one point, Javier looks over
right there.
That he looks over and sees her knitting something, and in his mind, it looks like the carcass she skinned off of her next victim.
Oh, I love this character already.
Jamila Sakura.
So is the Amazon an alien then?
No, she's actually German, and she's 6'8", and
that's just really tall.
Nails.
Is this one of those situations where being like the Belcher
feel like
situation?
I know her already.
Is it like being in the low gravity of space made them taller? Is that what's going on?
No. JR, there are people that tall now.
So I'm
they are not. Those are myths.
5 foot tall, 5'10", and the tallest woman I ever dated was 6'5". And it was like climbing a tree.
They're like birds. The tall women don't exist. Don't go there.
Sure.
They're like birds. They're not real.
JR, shut up. You're wrong.
All right, send the hate mail to Cisca at Blasters and Blades Podcast.
Yeah, don't blame me for this. I'm just an innocent bystander.
Somebody may one day actually email that podcast, that address, thinking it's real.
Your webmaster will appreciate getting it.
I will blame you, and we will just move on. All right, Doc, ask him the next question. Tropalicious time.
So, what tropes do you think Science Officer really hits best, and which ones do you think it kind of turns on its side and has fun with?
It turns redemption on its side because by the end of book 8, I redeem almost all of the pirates.
Okay.
You get to know them as people, and it turns out to be all of them against even worse people out there. The trope it turns on its head is the science half of science fiction. Way too much science fiction is all about blasters and car chases and never about sitting in space and mapping asteroids and planets quietly, or going to new places. And cross-breeding new gooseberry strains actually is a thread in 2 plots.
Nice.
Because he wants to
all I know
fix
about science. But do you get to invert the polarity of the dilithium crystals?
No, that's what the AI is for. Her name's Subi. She's awesome.
Okay. Because Doc loves it when you invert the polarity.
I'm going to invert your head one day.
So it's fun, right, and it's fast, and it's interesting.
Wonderful. So what subgenres do you feel this fits into, really, for those who are so into the subgenres of the subgenres?
Small space opera, a lot of galactic exploration. If you strip out all the science fiction parts, it's just a cracking good action story. My brother-in-law bitches that he sits down to read one more chapter and it's suddenly 2:00 in the morning. I do that to him a lot.
That's always a plus.
My goal is entertaining.
So for those who are less than scientifically inclined,
like JR,
how much science do you throw in there? I mean, is it readable for the layman?
Oh, absolutely. When I started writing these, my grandson was 14 and he was my target audience. Granted, he's now a junior at the Colorado School of Mines, really smart kid, but
I know somebody who went there and was on their football team. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
like
he
mines,
was really
like
cool.
the guys that
engineering, M-I-N-E.
It's a super engineering school.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he was.
Mines are cool too. I'm not throwing shade.
No, he was one of their. He was really cool for him because he went from being second string at KSU on the football team to being first string at Colorado School of the Mine, and they were awesome. They found enough scholarship money that he was able to move out there. So, yeah, they really
all right. So
kept going with school. It's a really good school. You'll never even be able to enter the door.
I mean, they might need janitors. I took mopping at my 88 kilo MOS, so I'll have you know I can swab a mean deck. All right. So before we dive into the book itself, more than we already have, and mock Cisca more than I normally do, we're going to take a moment where we shamelessly shill for the man.
For me.
Please stick with us. No, you're not the man. You're
no,
Cisca.
We can shill for the woman.
The Terran Empire is dead. Long live the Empire. Commander Jared Mertz, the bastard son of the Emperor, and his half-sister, Princess Kelsey, barely speak to one another. To their dismay, their father seizes an opportunity to change that and sends them on a dangerous quest to explore the fallen Empire. Separated from home by an impassable gulf and struggling to redefine their relationship, they find themselves thrust into a vicious war. Unless they work together to stop the Empire's deadly legacy, billions face a horrific fate. Empire of Bones, written by Terry Mixon, now available at Amazon.com.
All right, wow. After about an hour, we had to pause the show for Doc to try to get this weird idea that she's the boss out of her head. There's a lot of catfighting going on, mostly with her against her ego. It's okay. We settled everything. She admitted the supremacy of JR. But now we are back from that commercial interlude, and we're
just going to leave this up all day long. JR is wrong.
We are going to talk to Mr. Blaze Ward about its story itself. So, what can you tell us about the main character? What makes him unique in the crowd of science fiction literature?
He's broken and flawed, but not a bad guy.
And can do math.
Blew up his career, blew up 2 marriages, and is living by himself, recovering from PTSD, but it never gets him down. He is always out there exploring, and when they capture him, he basically has to repair himself, and you get to watch him put himself back together. And it is an emotional journey in the science fiction, but it is a people journey. It is a found family story.
Okay. So do we get how much of airtime does this AI get?
So she is there on the first ship, and then when he rips out the chips and hides them, he stuffs them in a little flying survey drone where she is constantly bitching that there's hardly any space to think. It doesn't do much of anything. And he has a remote control unit for it that doesn't actually do anything. But when he pushes buttons, according to her, it'll play music on her dashboard in her little room that she lives in. And so she lives inside that little drone for several books being silly. She composes music and at one point is playing a 4-armed piano in a pink polar bear suit because she's an AI and she can do any damn thing she wants to. The only limits are her imagination. And she actually turns into the entire narrator for the Alexandria Station universe because she comes back in the Jessica Keller books 6,000 years later.
Ooh,
nice.
And I'll write another series set 2,000 years in the future from that, where she comes back again. I have all those notes. And she's a goofball.
I like her.
The best ones are. So were there any secondary characters that were especially memorable for you besides the AI? And if so, could you tell us about them?
So you've got the 2.1 meter tall security chief, Jamila. She knits and does inverted handstand push-ups because she's like that. You've got the pixie polar bear engineer. You've got the guy who is Javier's minder and sidekick, and you watch him grow up over the whole course of the series. Suvi, who's there forever. Javier. It's a big thing. There's lots of rich characters, and they all get their moment in the sun. The running joke is they all get their my brain has just stopped working. Their actors cards.
Okay.
They're Actors Guild cards because they come on and they command
SAG
a scene
card?
and they're in charge. SAG card. Thank you. They all get a storyline to themselves at some point. It might only be a couple pages, but you get to see their background, their personality, their development. For me, that's the fun of science fiction. These characters that grow over time.
That's the fun of any fiction. But
you would be amazed. A lot of people don't do it. James Bond never changes, ever.
I don't know. I heard James Bond, maybe Henry Cavill. That would be amazing.
That would be fun.
So you mentioned a little bit about the pirates weren't really the bad guys, although they sometimes did bad things, and that the bad guys were external to the ship. So can you tell us a little bit about the bad guys without giving any spoilers?
The bad guy in book 1 is something of a religious fanatic who's been marooned on this planet for a long time and has issues with the crew when they show up and a big fight. There's a villain in book 3 who is the former first officer of the ship, and he's gone completely evil, kidnaps the Amazon and is torturing her, and Javier has to go rescue her.
Aww.
Because the line that she uses in book 6 is, nobody gets to kill me but Javier. And it is a ongoing sibling rivalry for 8 books over who's going to kill the other one first.
I understand this.
So foreplay, basically. Okay.
Kind of. If foreplay involves concussions and black eyes.
It does for JR.
I don't want to know these things. Thank you. Not kink shaming, but I don't want to be an accessory here.
Doc, what am I going to do with you? You just put too much stuff out there. All right, save me by moving this story along.
So this one time, I'm kidding. I can't play an instrument. Okay. So after talking about your characters, if they ever met you in a back alley, how do you think you'd fare after everything you put them through?
Most of them are tougher than I am, but I don't think they'd hate me all that much.
So you think you'd survive the encounter?
As long as Jamila wasn't trying to kill me.
Well, see, there you go. So do you have a favorite character archetype, especially one that you used for this series?
For this series, Javier is smart, but he's not an action hero.
Okay.
And that's the fun part about it. He does smart things, and he's a fast-talking, fast-thinking con artist, but he's not James Bond. He's not big, bad, shoot-'em-up type. If I do have an archetype, it's the incredibly strong woman who is capable of shooting a gun and punching your lights out. I realize that I use that archetype in a lot of places, but
because it's an amazing one.
It's a fan service because I've done the research, and my fan base is actually a little heavier female than male, which is weird.
That's because you have Jamila.
Yeah, but in space opera science fiction, it's much more of a male-dominated fandom.
Yeah, I've gone to those meetups. They're normally pretty sausage heavy. But speaking of sausages, how can you give us were there any things that you made? Sorry, I'm tired. So I'm messing up this wonderful segue I had from sausage to sausage. But a sneak peek into how the sausage was made. Did you write any cool scenes that you ended up having to cut in kind of like, I wish we could cut all of my blundering now?
No, actually, the way I write, I learned early on to write really clean first drafts. And so when I hit the end of my first draft of the book, it's 98% of what will get published. I'll read it. I'll send it to my wife, who's my first reader. She'll fix a few things. I'll send it for a copy edit. She'll fix a few things, and then I publish it. Nice. And that's one of the things that lets me write fast and publish a novel every month, is that it's clean. But I trust myself to write good story. So I don't meander off with, I shouldn't have written those 20,000 words. That doesn't make any sense. I'll go into it knowing, okay, this is what this is doing, and we go. So I like what I write, and it works for me. But I do all my sausage making and world building. Sorry.
Doc, we'll work on those segues as part of your better podcasting for 2022. But in the meantime, I'll give that a D-. You could do better.
Hey, JR.
Yeah.
Don't go to sleep tonight.
That's a good thing you're several states away. So finally, what can you tell us about the universe itself? In miniseries, the world where the story is told is as much of a character as the protagonist and antagonist. So can you give us a hint about the world of the Science Officer?
So there are 11 books in the Science Officer series. There are, and I mentioned this earlier, skip forward to Jessica Keller, 4,000 years later. There's about 16 books set in that timeline. There are about 40 books set in the whole Alexandria Station universe, and Suvi ties them all together, the AI, because she's in many of them. We see her as a pirate babe. We see her outliving everybody and living on a planet where she gets rescued by some salvagers. We see her rebuilding the universe, and we see her show up in a new android body she had built. So it's incredibly rich, and I have a timeline spreadsheet that starts in 1934 with the birth of Yuri Gagarin and goes up to the year 15006. And that's how I keep my continuity. Science Officer was born in about 6600. Jessica's born in about 13,000.
So this AI is how Skynet is born, it sounds like?
Possibly, if Skynet was a goofball who composed and liked to fly with the red berry music in the background.
I mean, who doesn't like to fly that way?
Absolutely.
So why Red Baron? Was that some sort of inspiration for you, or just random?
It's the Snoopy music. Because she's an AI, she's got this immense, impossibly deep database of old historical references and jokes that nobody else gets. And so she can mine all of history for music. I've actually had to invent musical trends in the 45th and 54th centuries just to give her something to talk about. Because one of the other characters writes symphonies in his spare time.
So do you have a music background as well?
I'm a polymath that way. I did vocal music a long time ago, but I've listened to just about everything.
Okay.
The CDs in my car right now are Willie Nelson, The Great Divide, Peter Boyer's American Classics, and the Queen Symphony by Tolga Kashev. Does that help?
Some variety there.
Eclectic.
Yeah. Anti-stodgy.
Okay, that works.
Forever learning new things.
Anti-stodgy. That's okay. So the science officer is clearly part of a series. I know because you just told us there are 11 books in this series. But is the story of the science officer done after 11? You mentioned that the AI comes back thousands of years down the road, but what about the story of the lovable science officer?
So the first 8 books are a single arc of time. 9 is abridged, and 10 starts what I call season 2, and I'm planning to write 8 novels for season 2 over the next several years. At that point, I don't know whether I'll bring it to an end or keep going. It depends on how people like him. He's my most popular series and most popular character. But I want to keep him fresh and interesting and having fun. And he's also aging because he's in his mid-40s now, and at some point you have to stop being an action hero.
Or really? Because it seems to work for Neo.
That's Keanu Reeves. I mean, dude, he's like Dolly Parton that way.
So, don't say it too loud. After Betty White, I'm a little nervous.
Okay, yep.
I was to say there are some authors who have made careers out of one character that just lives forever. So I mean, it could be done. Just create some.
Yeah, but I got other things I want to explore. One of the things about science fiction is I have a matrix that says, is your stuff Earth-centered or not Earth-centered? And does it have aliens or not have aliens? The science officer universe has no aliens other than the AIs. So I'm working on a series right now where there's lots of aliens, all sorts of weird aliens. Fun aliens, because, alien.
Okay. So we all know that every literary universe has its own internally consistent rules for science, technology, and or magic. So what sort of tech or magic could we expect from these books besides AIs?
We are deep in the future, and I postulate that it's possible to hyperspace through various means to get to other planets, which, according to Neil Clark, makes this pure fantasy because you can't do that. He considers anything with FTL not to be science fiction anymore.
Well, he's not the go-to person.
No, and I'm with you on that. But I don't focus on the tech so much as hand wave a lot of it into place and say, we can get there and we can do these things. This is a story about people. And they're solving a problem and they're dealing with other people that they don't like.
Yeah, you can get too far into the tech, and some people love that. But if I wanted to read technical manuals, well, I would.
And that's
some people can get very navel gazing
to as gun porn.
Yeah,
where you have to know the
guns. I'm okay with.
Yeah, but I don't write gun porn in my science fiction. If I'm going to write gun porn, it's going to be an action piece because I actually know guns, but I don't want to go that deep into the details.
That I kind of get totally.
So do you actually? So we'll pause on the gun porn for a second because I do like me some gun porn. Do you have blasters or chemical projectiles for weapons?
Both, primarily blasters. The technology of my space battles I ripped straight out of Starfleet battles. If you played the game, you'll recognize almost everything with new names because file off the serial numbers.
So when you plan out those battles, do you just sort of describe the chaos and move on so you don't have to get too granular, or do you start thinking actual strategy and I don't know, moving chess pieces around the board? How do you write your combat scenes then?
At the high level, the Jessica books, the Javier is just space piracy, so it's. Did we say enough, or did you need more?
You need more, Doc?
All right.
This is not Larry Correa level approved for gun porn. We need a few more.
The science officer books, there's only a couple of space battles because it generally takes place on the surface of a planet or on a derelict ship with an exploration. So it's more Star Trek-y that way. The Jessica Keller books, there's a lot of space battles, and I have to plot those out, but I plot them out at a fairly high level. And then you blow shit up and go on.
Do you write
That's
waves
always a
of
fun
missiles?
way to do it.
Was that
Roll
Doc?
pods?
Do you write waves of missiles?
Yes. Sometimes.
Yay. So, of all the tech in your universe, which one would you want to have for daily use?
I think the ability to travel through the hyperspace and visit all these new planets would be fun.
So how would you abuse that?
Oh shit, you'd never find me again. The science officer
the IRS
books start off 3/8 of the way around the galactic disk from Earth. I've actually got a rough map, and we're clear the hell over there. Because season 2, they start coming back this direction to set up trade paths and have adventures, but the Altai sector is way the hell over there. I'd like to go way the hell over there and see what it's like.
So because I'm a nerd, what do you use for your maps? Do you just have a general idea because you've looked at some of the charts from NASA? Or do you have a 3D mapping program you use for this? How do you map this galaxy?
I have this really cool painting with this dot down in one corner that says, "You are here." And it is our galaxy with Earth way the hell over there. And so when I'm talking about astrogation, it's frequently this arm, that arm. So Sagittarius or Orion arms that you're traveling across, in or out. Traveling to the quote unquote edge of the galaxy and looking out at the eternal darkness is a thread in the Petron books, because this guy grew up on literally the last inhabited planet. And at night in the winter, it's just darkness because there's no stars. There's no galaxy. There's no Milky Way.
That sounds very depressing.
It can be.
So when you go about creating, because you did mention that your future series will have aliens in them, how do you come up with your ideas for these aliens? Do you let your nightmares inspire you? Do you draw from nature? You make something up completely out of whole cloth? How do you come up with these aliens?
For the Lazarus books, it's a 7-book series that came out this time last year, I sat down and tried to figure out every style of locomotion I could come up with. So one of the characters is a glider squirrel. One of the characters, Gesundheit.
Avita Zane? I don't know.
One of the characters is a biped from the belly button up and a snake from the belly button down. One of them is a Tunisian rolling spider. One of them is a description taken straight out of the Bible, the Wheels of Ezekiel, which is a disc 4 feet tall, 2 feet wide, that looks like a rim for your tire, filled in with 6 eyes and 6 mouths around it. And that's straight out of Ezekiel 1. And they roll.
Interesting. So does this book have religious undertones then, or just happen to be a unique place to grab a character description?
It was a unique place, but one of the running jokes was the human character is talking to this wheelman, and he says, "We have this in our religion." And the wheelman's like, next time I ask the elders, I'll see if any of us visited your planet in the distant past. And it's just left dangling out there with, wow, maybe those were the aliens that came down.
So right up there with the 3 seashells, you never give us answers.
No, and that's the fun part. I don't have to. I can just leave threads dangling out there. I had a former coworker who was one of my fans who That drove him crazy because he would sit there and go, well, what about? And then he would wander off in these rabbit hole segues for hours thinking about, well, maybe they really did come down. And what would that mean to the Old Testament?
That isn't interesting. And there are some people that firmly believe, if you watch the History Channel After Dark, that aliens did in fact visit us, and the pyramids prove it.
Sure.
Elvis agrees.
I was going to say, was that Doc? No, that was the dog. Okay.
No.
I mean, sometimes they sound the same when they get going.
She's going to kill
me. You got it.
But it's okay. I can probably trip her with my cane and then outrun her.
You know what?
So
nice. Elvis is the only one who will sleep with you.
That's so harsh. We're going to move on because this is a family-friendly show, Doc. So clearly the interview is winding down, but before we wrap this puppy up and Doc and I murder each other, was there anything about the science officer that we didn't ask that you wanted to tell us?
Other than book 11 just came out in December and it's been a hit with people, I think people who enjoy character-driven science fiction will really enjoy Science Officer and really enjoy a lot of what I write, because that's where I start. The science fiction and the explosions and space car chases are fun, but it's the people. It's normal people put in impossible situations and have to survive. It is not a chosen one story, because there's nothing I hate more in life than a chosen one story.
So you're not a Ray fan.
But I love Buffy.
So how long is Buffy is awesome. And she's got a keen fashion sense. So how long is each individual book in the series? Because you've mentioned sort of all over the place with numbers. Is there a uniform sort of consistency or?
Nope. Science Officer and Mind Field, M-I-N-D, not M-I-N-E, are both about 24,000 words. Over the first 8, they jump up to about 30,000 words. They're all novellas. 9 is a collection of 4 short stories, so it's back down to about 20. But starting with 10, they're all novels, 45 to 55,000 words, because it gives me more space to tell a story and go deeper and have a couple of extra character threads, and you see other people do stuff.
So what was the thinking when you decided to publish so short? Because the trend in the indie has been progressively longer, to the point where they're chasing Brandon Sanderson to the Tomeville.
I used to write and was trained to write stage plays and screenplays. A 1-hour drama on television is actually 42 minutes of screen time plus commercials. Depending on your story, 40 minutes of screen time works out to be just about 24,000 words. And so when I wrote these, I was literally, this is called season 1, and it was intended to be a 8-episode season 1 on the BBC of 1-hour dramas.
Okay.
Did you end up pitching it to them, or did you just publish it anyway?
Oh, I just published it. We live in the modern age, and unfortunately, nobody's offering up traditional publishing contracts these days that are worth a damn. If you want to be published, you can, but you're not going to make any money. You're never going to get rid of your day job. I would rather be rich than famous, and I retired to become a full-time writer in February of 2018, and I support myself entirely on my fiction.
Okay. Speaking of supporting yourself on your fiction, we're going to segue to the audiobook. So are there audiobooks out there for those of us who read with our ears?
There are. The first 8 of the Science Officer are all available on audio, as well as a couple of other series that I've done. I'm iffy on doing more audiobooks right now, because I have a couple of friends who literally say, hey, Alexa, read The Science Officer to me. And then just listen to Alexa read the text out loud in her voice. And I know people that they don't listen to it at normal speed. They'll run it at 1.75 because they just want the content. They don't want the emotions of the reader. So I'm afraid that in a couple of years, all audiobooks are going to be available as a push-a-button app on your phone, and it's just going to spit it out for you.
I don't like those, to be honest.
I don't either, but it costs about $4,000 to turn The Science Officer into an audiobook.
Yeah.
And actually, no, not the 1,000, about $1,000 a piece for those, and about $2,500 a piece for the longer ones. But I just can't afford that because that's an expensive proposition. Science Officer, the first 4 books are available in German because I'm slowly getting those translated, but that's really expensive. Those, however, sell like hotcakes in Germany, so it's worth it.
So are these so there are some audiobooks out there. Are these exclusively your whole series? Is it exclusively to Amazon, so it's in the Kindle Unlimited? Nope. Or are you
I am wide. You can find me everywhere except Google Play.
So that means you're on the short end of the stick of trusting. So you're on the short end of the stick when it comes to trusting reporting for audiobooks, because I understand there's been some discrepancies on the reporting as well.
Google Play or in general?
No. I was saying I didn't even know, would never think to look for Google Play for books.
They had serious fraud problems 5, 6, 7 years ago, to the point that they were reporting no sales. I went and bought a copy of my own book and they never reported a sale for it. So I and most of the writers I know took our stuff down from Google Play. You can get back up there through Draft Digital as a writer, but until Larry, Eric, and Sergey are in prison for fraud, I'm not dealing with them again. But I'm on Kobo, which means Walmart has me. I'm on Amazon. I'm on Barnes & Noble. I'm on Apple. I'm everywhere. I don't want to limit to my fan base to KU.
Fair.
I think that makes a lot of sense. CJR, I told you don't have to have KU to make money.
A lot of people are going to the KU. They go to KU first, and then when the page reads slow up, then they take it completely wide and pull it out, like so the 90-day window or whatever. But it's I don't know, the economy of the whole book thing is changing, and if that is something you'd like us to dive deeper in, we can get the guests on for that. But we try to keep this very reader focused. This isn't another How to Be an Author podcast, because quite frankly, I don't consider myself qualified to teach you that. But if that is something you're interested in, dear listener, shoot us a message in the comment section or whatever. Doc has connections all over the traditional publishing space and obviously we know some indie authors. We could get a panel if you would be interested, but it's just, we try to keep this a very fan focused sort of.
Oh, absolutely. If you want to do something on the writer side, though, reach out to my wife, because she's been on both sides of that equation. She was trad pub out of rock in the old days.
We'll put that on the back burner, and we'll let the audience weigh in to see what they're interested in, because obviously if they're not interested, then because we've intentionally courted readers as our audiences, so as opposed to a bunch of other authors. So, and Doc has helped with that because she knows people that read the fantasies, like fantasy stories like Pern and Wheel of Time, and the Lord of the Rings, all the good fantasy.
So what do you guys consider fantasy?
Anything with dragons.
Where do you classify like urban fantasy and contemporary as opposed to sword and sorcery, or do you call all of those fantasy?
Well, they're all fantasy.
All of that fantasy.
It's like saying, I personally look at it as science fiction is when you put more scientific method into it and you're building a scientific reason for it, even if you're not explaining the science in great detail. And that fantasy and urban fantasy, all of those, sword and sorcery, they're all fantasy. They're all just different flavors. They're all subgenres within the fantasy category, personally. Cool. So I am not a big fan of the subgenre obsession that Amazon has encouraged. But that's because I read everything in science fiction and fantasy. I'm very happy like that. JR wants everybody to have a monogamous relationship with their genres. I am more genre fluid as a reader.
Polyamorous.
She has problems with monogamy. What can we say?
I'm pan-genre loving. That's okay.
There you go.
See, I can
and now that we've offended everybody, let's
Did you guys have any other questions for me? I know you're working from a checklist, but were there any ones you wanted to pursue besides gun porn?
We inserted ours as we went if we had questions. Okay. So what you mentioned a little bit that all of your series that you've got planned or have written are all in this universe. Do you have anything outside of this universe for?
Oh no, that's just 40. Just 40 in the Alexandria Station universe. I've got 8 or 10 other universes with novel series set in them that have absolutely no connection whatsoever. Yeah, I said novel number 77 will be done soon.
And when did you publish novel number 1?
Novel number 2 is Oberon, which is the first of Jessica Keller. The novellas Science Officer and Minefield were actually my first big science fiction publication, and that would have been Science Officer came out in December of 14, and Minefield was January of 15 or February.
Holy crap, you've been cranking along. Okay.
So are you going to do something special when you hit like 100?
Yes. And the target is that will occur in the winter of 24.
So, well, we'll have to find out.
Right. Well,
awesome.
We'll have to have you back for that. So, before we let you go, dear listener, we'd like to remind you that your thoughts matter as well. I'm assuming you're all here because you like reading as much as we do. So please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. Even a bad review can help sell a book to me. I saw one that said, this reads like JR is a 12-year-old with ADHD writing gun porn. And I'm like, dude, I'd buy that book from JR. So I don't consider, all reviews.
This is why he's science, because he doesn't realize he is JR.
My shrink talks to me about this whole personality thing. I just got a few of them. It's okay. So
as long as they all get along.
Yeah, they do. It's okay. Your thoughts matter, dear listener. So, share them on there. It helps if you're constructive. So if you, for other readers, if you just say, I don't like this and move on, that doesn't do anything for your fellow reader. If you say why you don't like that can help people decide, even if you didn't like it, someone else might. And if you get a book and you review it as, this is not the Jimmy Dean sausage I ordered, blame Amazon and please don't salvage the book. It's not their fault. They didn't sell you Jimmy Dean sausage. That happened to an author I know.
Really?
He got a 1-star because it wasn't Jimmy Dean sausage.
Okay.
I guess they were really having a craving for that beef stick. I don't know. What? Wow.
Sounds like an angry pregnant woman. I say this. I was an angry pregnant woman. I would have done something like that.
I understand because I have somebody out there who buys every single one of my books at full price so I can give them a 1-star review.
What?
I can actually tell you where he is in the reading list because a 1-star review will pop up. Mostly because he's a sexist pig who thinks women should be barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen. And he's desperately offended that I have competent women doing competent things on spaceships and even being in command. That offended the hell out of him.
And he's a verified purchaser on all of these?
It's great.
Well,
hopefully he's not returning them after he gets the verified purchase status to review them. But man, that's some dedication to his stalkery. I can almost commend him on his dedication.
I love that you have a badass knit because I knit.
Hey, remind me. Actually, I sent you a link to download Science Officer if you wanted it.
Yes, you did.
You should grab it.
I will.
We'll have to check it out.
If you want more
to the rotation.
Huh?
Go ahead.
What are you?
The Science Officer is story number 1. There's actually an omnibus of 1 to 4 and a second omnibus of 5 to 8. That's cheaper if you want to buy them as a group.
Okay. We will check that out. We're always looking for books to do. We're going to start doing audio reviews of books and such that we read as you're fired, Doc. I'm going to dock your pay. So we'll start doing those as well for you, dear listener. They are on the docket for 2022. And Doc, what is the next book we're going to review? Something by Laurel K. Hamilton?
I think it's a terrible fellow.
I know. There you go. So be looking for that one in the near future. But as we wrap this up, because I can ramble ad nauseum and put you all to sleep, Blaze, can you tell us how listeners can find you?
Easiest way to find me is blazeward.com. I'm available on all the platforms where you get your books. I'm on Facebook if you want to find me there. I've got a Patreon if you want to give me money. Those people get to read short stories 6 months or a year before they get published.
Wow.
So, yeah. Well, I write fast, so I write stuff for them on a regular basis.
Okay. And you can find us, dear listener, on our Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email the real email for the podcast at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Most of the time you're talking to Doc because she's handling all of our booking. So be kind to her and don't make her cry. We have the Blasters and Blades Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen over at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades podcast. We have our website at anchor.fm/blasters tech and tech blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. We are working on a real proper grown-up website. Doc, have you talked to your minions about this yet?
Nah, no. Leave me alone.
Okay, so she's still on her post-Dragon Con 12 people hangover.
My coworker broke his knee for New Year's. I've been a little overworked at work.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, tell him not to do that. That's bad for his health.
Well, jeez. I think his knee noticed.
I hope so. Let that be a lesson to you. Don't break your knee, people. So if you want to support the show, you can do that on our website at anchor.fm/blasters tech and tech blades, where you can support us with a Patreon style model for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on because running a podcast isn't free. You can also support the show at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts Doc Cisca and Nick Garber duly intoxicated. They will drink until their liver surrenders.
Never surrender. And if Nick doesn't show up, I get his share.
You get his grog rations if he doesn't show up, yes.
Yep. Wait,
Doc,
now
bring
I'm
us home.
supposed to do my thing. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For the absentee sober Nick Garber, J.R. Handley, I'm Cisca. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, where we indulge your love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, torturing JR, and all things that go boom.
And we've got a new one in the chat that you can't see because it's the private chat for us as we're hosting this podcast. But Blaze brought up a new breakfast pizza creation of waffles and syrup pizza, and we just want you all to weigh in. I'm kind of ambivalent. I do like the breakfast food so much that I don't eat it because it's bad for me. But I mean, I might be down to try that and take my chances of burning for heresy. What say you, Doc?
I'd be willing to try it.
How do you feel about the dessert pizzas that like Cece's has, for instance, where it's basically a giant cookie?
I don't go to Cece's.
It's really good cookie.
What?
I don't go to Cece's.
Oh, you're in Atlanta. You probably don't have any foods like that. It's a small town, so what is it, 100 people or so in Atlanta? On that note, dear listener,
science is so bad. Okay.
Sure.